Have you ever watched a video and within the first few seconds, you just had to keep watching? Now, of course, good storytelling has a big part to play in this, but at this point in the video, the first 1 to 5 seconds, we don't really even know what the story is in most cases. So what is it then that gets us to keep watching? You see, it all comes down to a hidden editing technique that 99% of video editors don't even realize exists, and if they use it, a lot of times don't even know that they did. And if you don't understand or master this one thing, your videos will never get the engagement that they deserve. So in this video, I'm gonna break down what that silent hack that the top editors use to hook you instantly. And by the way, this is something that Hollywood films, viral YouTubers, and even some of the biggest TikTok creators all leverage to keep your eyes glued to the screen without fancy plugins or effects and without super cringy B-roll or transitions and overwhelming jump cuts and without relying on clickbait. But here's the thing, despite what you might think, if you don't use this correctly, your videos will feel off, right? And your audience, they won't even know why they're clicking away when they click away or click off your video. But before getting into it, you first need to understand one really big mistake that almost every beginner editor makes when trying to use this technique. And if you don't fix this, then your edits will actually make your videos much worse. So I'm gonna show you exactly what this mistake is, but first, let's break down how this technique actually works. Now, I remember when I started video editing, I learned how to do some basic cuts and basically kind of just formulate what I thought to be was a decent edit. But that was because I thought editing was just about cutting clips and putting them together. What I didn't realize, like most people, is how much of the story, the video, the psychology of why people watch and how things play out actually relies so much on the edit. I didn't realize that. You see, despite what a lot of these new YouTube editors say who, just started editing 3 months ago and now trying to teach others, great editors don't just cut clips together. They build tension and then they release it. And this is one of the things that keeps viewers watching continuously, whether they realize it or not. And this is the first thing that you need to fundamentally understand in order to edit like the top 1% when trying to hook people. Now, let me ask you, have you ever heard of Mr. Beast? Maybe that's a dumb question because of course you have, right? If not, he's quite literally the biggest YouTuber in the world. So who better than him to look at as an example in tension and release? Now, have you ever noticed how Mr. Beast's videos, they always start with a super high energy kind of challenge-esque type intro, but then they slow down just a bit to be able to build anticipation. See, that's quite literally because he's using the tension and release editing strategy. See, when it comes to editing, when you're at least a good editor or better, intention-based editor, nothing on screen happens by accident. This tension and release that Mr. Beast does so often, it's not by accident. And as someone who's edited for coming on almost 8 years now at this point, who's worked as a full-time editor for a lot of those years and for some of the top 1% of YouTubers, and who has hired and unfortunately even had to also fire some editors, I have learned that there's a very common mistake amongst editors, and that really new editors too, and that's that cutting without intention. And as a result, the video proceeds on and on, cutting too fast or too slow without any rhythm, without any motivation, any direction at all. And this is what I like to call a weak way to edit. So how can you go from the weak way to edit to an engaging way to edit? How can you implement all of this for yourself? Now, before I say what I'm about to say, take what I'm about to say with a grain of salt, because this tip is heavily dependent on the type of niche that you're editing for, the type of video, the specific story of the video you're editing, right? These are all different things that, when factored in, might change the trajectory of this advice I'm about to give you, and it needs to be received slightly differently. So, generally speaking, you can implement all this by focusing on using a mix of fast cuts to build tension and slower cuts or shots to release it. It's kind of like how great songs have build-ups before the drop. But this is just one small aspect to this entire strategy that we'll be covering. And here's the thing, before understanding the next technique that falls under this umbrella, I first want to ask you, do you understand what psychology is? Most of you probably do, right? What if I told you that you could quite literally manipulate someone's stimulus in order to watch videos for longer, simply by understanding psychology and implementing that understanding of psychology into your video edits? Now, it would be a pretty game changer thing if that was real, right? Well, it is, and that's exactly what we're going to be doing on a micro level with all these strategies, especially in this next technique. See, you can quite literally manipulate someone's brain to stay locked in just by understanding and applying basic psychology to your edits, as I said. And once you do, your videos will naturally pull people in without cheesy B-roll or stock footage, without cheesy effects and horrible transitions, without clickbait or any other annoying strategies and gimmicks that we're told or come across. But before I show you how to do this exactly, I very quickly just want to address something that I get asked literally all the time in all of these videos and a lot of the comments in these videos, which is, what tools and plugins do I use to make videos at the level that I do? And before I give a very straightforward answer to this, I just want to say and bring this up now because using the right tools does 100% help you enhance engagement. I mean, the right tools with pro techniques like what we're learning right now, you'll crush every other editor who's not doing this. The best editors, though, they use subtle and really powerful visuals and audio cues to keep people engaged. And one of the ways, the easiest ways to, by the way, keyword here, to help do this is by using professional plugins and tools, right? That work for you, not against you, that help elevate your visual appeal to the video. And for me, because I'm always asked, hands down, the number one place that I go to get 90% of my plugins and help me make epic videos, where clients literally text me this exact text message that you're seeing on screen right now. For me, it's MotionVFX. I think MotionVFX is the gold standard within the editing space. I mean, they've quite literally been making industry level plugins for years and years. They've been featured in Apple keynotes. And for me, they're just incredibly high quality. Quite simply could not make the visual quality of videos that I do as quickly as I do without them. And I genuinely, with all of my heart, mean that. So if you guys want to check them out, I'm going to leave a link below for you guys to check out because I highly recommend checking them out to help you elevate your content a little bit more. But regardless of whether you decide to use plugins or not to help you elevate your editing, we need to talk about this next technique. And it's the subconscious echo technique. But first, I want you to imagine with me, you're sitting in a dimly lit room, your eyes are glued to your computer screen. Your heart maybe even pounding a little bit in anticipation, and you have no idea why, but you just cannot seem to look away from your screen, from what you're watching. See, you're confused because the video that you're watching, it isn't some high budget Hollywood film that's quite literally designed to grab your attention. It's just a simple YouTube video. And yet every second you watch pulls you deeper and deeper in like an invisible force holding you, holding your mind and your attention, dragging you closer to that screen. And you find yourself watching a video, completely hooked, even when you didn't intend to keep watching. 1 second, you're clicking onto something just for a minute, and the next thing you know, boom, 20 minutes pass by, and you've watched that entire video. You see, this isn't by accident. It's psychology-based editing at work. Most top editors use subtle visuals or audio cues to make your brain feel like it needs to keep watching. And a perfect and just a first example that kind of comes to my mind here, I don't know if it's a good example or not, but Casey Neistat vlog, right? He uses a lot of sound effects and subtle background music shifts within his videos when transitioning between shots, which is something I love about his videos, and it makes it feel very seamless. But your brain also picks up on it and stays engaged, and it doesn't feel extremely jarring, right? Well, in most cases at least, because sometimes Casey Neistat does intentionally make things very jarring, but always to improve on the storytelling. Now, before learning to use this yourself, you really need to understand this thing, which is we're not just cutting videos. We are conditioning the brain. Your brain, it's wired to recognize patterns. And when a pattern's introduced, your brain starts to look for that pattern. Even when you don't realize that it's doing so, it still tries to look for that pattern. And this is where strategic repetition comes in. It's what I like to call the looping effect, where basically It's just how to hack attention with repetition. So if your video starts with a unique visual or ideally a standout phrase or line of dialogue, your viewer's brain will register it. But here's where most editors miss out on a fantastic editing opportunity to help elevate the storytelling of that video. You see, if you reintroduce that same element later in the video, it subtly reinforces familiarity and keeps the viewer locked in. Why? Well, because the brain craves closure. If a pattern's broken, the brain wants to complete it desperately, otherwise known as a setup and a payoff. So we can do this as editors by focusing on really three main things. And to keep this really simple and digestible, those three things are to reintroduce sound cues when you can. So for example, let's say that your video starts with, I don't know, a deep bass boom sound effect, right? And you have this specific sound effect only when introducing a problem. Well, if you subtly bring back that same boom sound effect when delivering the solution, it helps subconsciously tie that whole message together, making it feel more complete, right? And this may feel super in the weeds and unnecessary and ridiculous, but I've been lucky enough to edit for clients where I have the back-end access to their YouTube data. And I'm telling you, after obsessing over these little micro changes time and time again, simply reintroducing things like sound cues, it makes a big difference, at least based off the data. And that leads us to the second thing we could do, which is echoing key visuals. So for example, if there's a specific shot, like a close-up of someone's face or a certain color shift that you use or a certain color grade that you use, like that's and it's used early on, bringing it back later on in the video, it makes it feel more intentional, giving the viewer's brain a sense of rhythm, right? It's why great movies use callback shots to create an emotional payoff or flashbacks and then paying that off with current modern day. And next is repeating key phrases. Now this one's my favorite. And forget about editing for a second and just think about storytelling. When a phrase is repeated at the beginning and end of a video, it creates a psychological bookend, right? Your brain says, oh, you know, I've seen this before, right? And that triggers a sense of resolution or payoff. And when it comes to the YouTube world, this creates something called viewer satisfaction, meaning someone gets satisfied by watching your content and therefore is exponentially more likely to subscribe or continue to watch content that you've come out with. You see, this works for a few reasons. The main one is what I like to call the brain hook effect. And it's basically where our brain doesn't just process what's in front of it, but it's constantly trying to predict what's to come next. By subtly repeating sound cues or visuals, or my favorite one, which is words or dialogue, you're training the viewer's brain to stay engaged throughout the edit because it's constantly looking for the next pattern to complete. When you methodically do a setup or a curiosity loop, it's constantly looking for that payoff to that. And the best part of this is they won't even notice that it's happening. And remember, the best editing, it's always invisible. So we don't want them to know that it's happening. And this isn't about flashy or crazy, cheesy and overbearing transitions or crazy effects. It's about simply creating a flow that feels natural where viewers can't stop watching even if they don't know why. So next time you edit, think beyond just cutting clips together and taking out mistakes. Artificial intelligence can do that for us. Instead, ask yourself, what sounds or words or visuals can I introduce early on and bring back later in the video? And the second thing is to ask yourself, how can I make my video feel like a complete cycle or journey? And then, am I guiding the viewer's attention subconsciously? And I know, again, this sounds like it's super in the weeds and just ridiculous, but it's not. And by taking the time to practice these and master these techniques, you won't just be editing videos. You'll be quite literally engineering an experience that helps keep viewers hooked from the start to the finish. There's still another technique that we need to really understand and know in order to bring this all together so that we can begin to genuinely edit like the top 1%. But I just want to take 1 second and just say, let's be real for a second. You can master all these editing techniques, but what's the point if you don't have a client to edit for where you can actually implement them? See, I see so many editors grinding for hours and hours on their craft, but never actually landing paying gigs. And trust me, I've been there. I've been there with negative dollars in my account to my name, and it was a bad place to be. But what changed everything for me, well, it was when I learned how to turn my skills into a business. And that's exactly why I created Creator Launch Accelerator. It's where I personally coach editors on how to level up their actual craft and edit like the top 1% and land real clients that actually pay well. And I hate so much to talk about numbers because it feels tacky and cringy to me. And I don't want to come off like these super lame gurus, but I do understand that we live in a trust recession right now and people do need proof. So just to show you that what I do teach is real and works, this is what I did last month as an editor. And no, it's not all profit, of course, but it was still a very, very good month for me. So if you want to learn how to, 1, become a better video editor, 2, learn how to make it a business where you can actually have a career, and 3, learn the strategies and tips that I've used to grow other YouTube channels and my own channel here as a video editor, where you can learn the same tactics to help your clients build their channels on the back end of editing and build your own personal brand. If you're serious about making this your career, not just your hobby, then I'll also leave the link below this video to my program where you could check out. And right now, I just want to say one last thing. We're running a crazy, crazy discount. So you should definitely check that out now. Now, stepping outside of YouTube for a second, have you ever wondered why you binge watch Netflix shows? I mean, I'm talking episode after episode, telling yourself, listen, I'm going to go to bed. I just need to finish this last episode. And then that last episode ends, and then you end up staying up till 3 a.m. binge watching the whole season of the show. Well, I say this because I've also been there. And, after having this happen to me way too many times, I decided to really look into this as a video editor. And I came to realize it all really comes down to one main thing. You see, it's because they never let you feel done. They always hint at what's next. And yes, especially with industry productions, this can all come down to the scripting or filmmaking. But the way it actually, in reality, ends up playing out on screen, it's all because of the video editor. We can take this common trend of what I like to call micro loops in most Netflix shows, where they essentially just make you feel like you cannot stop on this episode. Instead, you need to keep watching just one more episode to feel satisfied. And this continues and continues and continues. So as editors, we can apply this to either industry editing or even YouTube editing. But at the end of a scene, unlike with higher productions in the Hollywood scene, instead we add a quick cliffhanger, frame, or something that's intriguing that makes the viewer want to see what happens next. Well, for example, in film, or in this case in Netflix shows or movies, it would be something like this, right? Well, right before an episode ends, instead of fading to black or rolling the credits, what they're gonna do is they're gonna cut to probably maybe a reaction shot or a hint of the next conflict in the following episode, or set up a new conflict, right? Or a snippet of the audio, or some sort of, they'll set something up in some way at the very last part of the episode. Just enough, they'll give you just enough to reignite your curiosity to watch and click on and watch the next episode, right? When it comes to YouTube, we can take this concept and we can apply it to the social landscape of things here. We can't do it the exact same way, but we could take the concept and apply it. So when we do this and break this strategy down, well, and break down what they do at the end of each episode on Netflix, it's really simply rehooking and setting up. So we can do the same thing in our edits for YouTube. And before you go ahead and comment down below, for this to work extremely seamlessly, you likely need to speak and strategize with whomever you're editing for to make sure that you can actually execute this really well. But for the point here, it's to never let the edit end when it comes to the sense of evoking curiosity. See, as editors, a really big way in which we can show our value is by providing some sort of return on investment. And sometimes that return on investment, it's socially or with back-end data from YouTube. For example, a longer AVD, or average view duration, on YouTube, which is basically an increase in retention, where we're just making sure that the viewers stay on the actual person's video for longer. Or another way that we can do this, it was with a higher end screen video CTR, click-through rate, right? Because you see, YouTubers have specific data on each video and on how many people actually click onto other videos at the end of their video. You have all that information on their channel. So after watching one of your videos, If we as editors can increase the amount of people who watch other videos in our content ecosystem in our channel, that means we're successfully doing this rehook and setup technique at the end of each video, because we have evoked enough curiosity with our edits at the end of the YouTube video in order to get them to want to stay onto our content or in our content ecosystem and watch more of our videos. And an example of this is in what I'm about to do right now to you. And to look and sound fancy, I'll show you this in the form of a mathematic equation or breakdown. So I like to look at it as the following, right? Which is curiosity plus stakes times emotion plus pain equals retention and action. You see, following that fancy equation, what I'm about to do is I'm about to first hook you with curiosity. Next, I'm going to evoke emotion by adding stakes. Then I'm going to hit a common pain point you likely have, because it's a common pain point amongst editors, i.e. adding more emotion. And then I'm going to be giving you a payoff to that curiosity, which leads you into my other content or my content ecosystem. And when you do this really well, it looks like this. But here's the thing. There's something that I didn't tell you at the start of this video. You see, all of this information is completely useless if you don't fully grasp or understand how to get clients to edit for in the first place. But luckily for you, you can click on this video right here and learn exactly how to land your first client step by step, even without a portfolio. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. And as always, I'm rooting for you.